Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on your location. This is Mr. Patriarch. Thank you very much for joining me on this rainy, cold Alaska morning of September the 16th in the year of our Lord 2023. And Yule says, sounds like an early 2000s racing game intro. You're very close. You're very close. It's actually a late 90s racing game intro. And the game was called Extreme G Racing. It was like a futuristic kind of motorcycle racing game where you drive these, yeah, kind of. I don't even know how to describe that. They're basically like 25th century motorcycles with like lasers and stuff. It was on the Nintendo 64, and it was a lot of fun. And I always remember as a kid playing that game when it came out and just thinking the soundtrack was really cool. You know, it's very very 90s, techno or whatever in terms of the audio soundtrack, and it's great. So to this day, sometimes I'll still listen to it, a little bit for nostalgia and a little bit because it still sounds cool. So that's about it on that. Langton Industries afternoon. Good afternoon to you too, sir. Wrote late 90s before changing it a little. Yeah. So as you can tell from my voice, perhaps, I'm not sure. I'm trying to keep it down a little bit. Most everybody else is still asleep in the house. I have the wife and youngest sleeping in the other room, which I snuck from to come to the kitchen to stream. And my mother-in-law is visiting. This is her last day, actually. She's going to head out back to South Africa tonight. She stayed with us for about a month. And she's with my oldest boy, who is definitely still sleeping. He's a late riser, so I'm trying to keep my voice down without being too loud. Because our place is, I don't know, it's definitely big enough for us. But you know how sound can carry in a house in the not necessarily early hours, but the quiet hours of the morning when everybody is still asleep. Kitchen stream, that's right. Best place in the house. Best place in the house. Although I do still have some leftovers I need to finish. So there won't be too much cooking in here this morning, probably. Our neighbor made some blueberry cream cheese danishes, which were hella good. Homemade. And I got my coffee here, but I do not have the Danish. Unlike my friends Grant and Jeremy from Contra Gentiles, I will not burden you with on-stream eating sounds. But yeah, sort of like a running joke over on their show. The complainers who don't appreciate the chewing sounds, which I understand. But with them at that point, it's a bit where like the more people complain, the more they do it now. So it's just, that's the way the world is. But yeah, I've been having a good life, to be honest, since my family got back. I mean, I had a good life before then, but hey, the it's even better now for obvious reasons. Glad you merged from attack from South Africa, man. Yes, nope, sure did. And to be honest, the part of South Africa I was in, for the most part, was actually pretty good. I mean, it had obviously seen better days, but fortunately, as I've said a number of times before, much of the Western Cape is actually still quite a nice place to live in. It's just the large urban areas which are not nice to live in, with some exceptions. Stellenbosch is still kind of okay from what I experienced. Somerset West, still quite nice. Surrounding areas, the Helderberg region in general, I like. I would live there, no problem. But there are definitely issues there, but they're less pronounced than most of the rest of the country. And if you get out to the Dorpies, the small towns, I mean, they're still quite nice in the Western Cape, and some of them are also quite Caucasian, let us say. So not too much to worry about in the way of shanty towns, etc. So, but yeah, it's miss some things about South Africa for sure. So I see we've been going now for a little bit. I'm going to be getting started. If you are new here and if you enjoy this sort of content, like the video, the algorithm appreciates that. Things you can support the show on links to PayPal, Subscribestar. So up to you. You can, or you don't have to, but it's there and appreciated. Now, what prompted the stream? So obviously, how do I put it? Anybody who's been, I guess, away from their family for an extended period of time, I think will say that it is a time for introspection, time for change. And, depending on, I guess, your mental state, there's a lot that you can sort of learn in that time. And I think anybody who's been through unusual circumstances can glean something from them. And I thought there were some things that I learned from my experience that for, let us say, a younger audience, or maybe not so young, they might be able to benefit from some of the tidbits I was able to pick up from my time apart, 1.5 years separated from my family. Now, I will add the qualifier that I did visit for 2 weeks twice during the time I was separated. Once was in July of last year when my second son was born. And then I had like a surprise visit over Christmas. So my wife was not expecting me. And then I told her a couple weeks out. And yeah, that was the second time I visited. But aside from that, we did not share the same legal address. We were not cohabitating. It was a visit. And they came to an end. But yeah, aside from that, we spent 1.5 years apart. Now, the first thing that you learn from stuff like this is that you can't plan for everything. So we had a plan that this would not take nearly as long as it did. The immigration information from U.S. Citizen and Immigration Services indicated that you would be able to come to the United States on a tourist visa, which she already had, and that you could apply for change of status when you had arrived in the United States. They have since removed this wording from their website after the fact, which indicates that this has been a recurring problem for people misunderstanding the immigration situation. So we had a plan, and the letter of the law seemed to indicate that, yes, you could come to the United States on a tourist visa, and then you can apply, no guarantees, but you can apply to change. This is not the case, even though it's exactly what it said on the government's own source. Go figure. So with that, we, had to wing it as best we could, which in our case meant waiting a very long time before we could live together again. And if I look at the course of my life, particularly since about 2015, there's been a lot of things that I couldn't have planned when I was younger. I was a subcontractor for Shell for a time and worked in the Arctic on an oil drilling expedition. Didn't plan for that at all. Didn't plan visiting Europe after the drilling season or meeting my then girlfriend who was in South Africa. Didn't plan for that. It just kind of happened. Didn't plan for, moving to South Africa, my wife getting cancer, or moving to South Africa because my wife got cancer, or this immigration hiccup, or losing my income, or having to restart my life a number of times. Didn't plan any of that stuff, but that's okay. That is okay. And this is not some kind of Forrest Gump, you're a feather floating in the wind there's not a Forrest Gump feather floating in the wind takeaway to get from what I'm trying to say. Rather, the hand of providence works in mysterious ways. That's the way I prefer to look at it. And if I look back in retrospect, a lot of those things that happened, I look back now and I'm like, wow, what a blessing in disguise. Even though it was kind of stressful at the time or I didn't understand it, looking back now, I can be like, yeah, actually I preferred that these strange things happened, that I had these unorthodox experiences. And just as one example, when after we had been married, my wife contracted a type of bone cancer. And I'm like, well, what do I do? I don't have a lot of money at all. I was just getting my career started or restarted, I guess, after leaving the oil industry. And so I moved to South Africa for treatment. And then the benefit of that was it totally changed my life in a lot of good ways, in terms of how I view the world, in terms of making amazing friends, in terms of really developing a relationship with my in-laws, a great, deep relationship with my in-laws, and especially my father-in-law, who nobody could have known at the time, passed away right before I returned home to South Africa, from South Africa. And I mean, what a blessing that is, that I got, and he got to have the last 5 years of his life with all of his family there, and with the grandchild he wanted so bad. And I mean, that's great. And none of that would have happened if my life went according to plan, right? But it did. And I'm glad it didn't work out the way I planned it in retrospect. So that's one thing. You can't plan for everything. Which I guess goes on to the next one, which is it's less your situation and how you handle it. So far less important, I think, in most cases, aside from very extreme circumstances, perhaps, is it much less important kind of where you're at in life, or sort of what happens, and more how you handle the situation. So it's the classic Gandalf advice to Bilbo or Frodo, right? You know, I wish I had not been born in this time, in such times. And Gandalf says, "So do all who live to see such times, but that's not for them to decide. All you have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us." All right, and yeah, that's definitely true. So, you know, you can have an unfortunate situation happen and freak out. You can abandon, your family. You can have an affair. You can do any number of crazy things in stressful scenarios or things that don't go your way, or you can do otherwise. And my advice is try to endure, which goes on to the next thing. Endurance is one of the best virtues that there can be. Endurance matters. Endurance matters not just in terms of marriage and family, but just life in general. You're going to get the shit sandwich sometimes, and they're going to ask you to eat it. And frankly, sometimes you got to eat it. It's not, necessarily fair, but it is what it is. Endurance matters. And it matters from the perspective of the church too, because suffering and enduring is how we are saved in large part. And I know for me personally, this time apart has been very transformative to me personally, in my soul. So I guess endurance matters in terms of honor, in terms of, just doing the right thing and not succumbing to sin. Or even if you do, trying to learn from it and repent. But it matters to the people you love, and it matters to God. And if you do endure, God will reward you. He will. It might not be materially, certainly. It might not be in this life, but there is, in my experience, a peace that comes from trying to endure, trying to, accept the suffering, basically. Acceptance of the suffering is a great virtue, in my opinion, and it will leave you transformed at the end. Next thing I learned, love, and I knew this before, but it really was hammered home by this experience, where love is sacrificial. And that can take form in many ways. And there are multiple ways in which I saw it during my time apart from the family. First, there's the obvious thing, like, I love my family. I'm going to send them money. I'm going to try to be faithful. I'm, going to not try and betray my wife's trust. I'm going to financially support them. I'm going to wait for them. I'm just going to count down the days until they can be here. I'm going to be positive, even when I don't feel like it sometimes, for her sake. And likewise with my wife, same thing. Faithfulness, sacrifice for the boys. She's doing a lot of work without the support of a husband, looking after two very young children. And she's stressed out a lot, but she's keeping it together. She's staying positive. Of course, she has these moments where I have to be the, shoulder for her to cry on and talk to her over WhatsApp, off the ledge, metaphorically. But hey, that's just part of the deal, and it's also why. How do you put it? It's that sacrificial part, and the only reason why she's was distressed, or I was distressed for that matter, is because we really did care and we loved each other, and you're making sacrifices for that person, but it hurts. It hurts to be apart, which leads to my next point, the value. And so I guess to put a bow on the self-sacrifice part, there's no such thing as love without sacrifice, in my opinion. If you're not willing to give of yourself to somebody else, then that's not really love. Now, that doesn't mean you have to give of yourself to everybody, just because there's limitations. Like if you were to do that as a family man, then you would be neglecting your household. You'd be neglecting your wife. You'd be neglecting your children, and that's not okay. But let us say within the dynamic of a family, the wife should be living for the husband should be living for the wife, and both should be living and working towards the good of the children. And that's what love is. It's not about me. It's about you. That's love. The value of an oath is the next thing I learned. Obviously, your mileage may vary based upon the sort of person you become involved with, unfortunately. But my wife, when she promised herself to me and to be faithful and to be, there in the good times and the bad times, in sickness, in health, in separation or not, that was a promise she meant. And like I said, she suffered to a certain extent for keeping it. Likewise, myself. But the honor and solemnity of the promise she meant, and it was kept. Likewise, myself to her. So that the good thing about the understanding that, yes, this is our bond to each other is not merely one of convenience, but one of honor, love, and a mystical union through matrimony, was a big, took a lot of worry and anxiety I otherwise might have, right? If we were separated for that long. A lot of that worry was alleviated by the fact that the oath I knew was held sacred by both parties. It was held sacred by me and by her, which I think is one of the great tragedies of the current age we live in, is that, making a promise before God, A, doesn't happen a lot anymore, and B, they don't really mean it a lot of the times. But when there is mutual understanding about the value of a solemn oath, the value of a promise, and that your word transcends circumstances and will endure in any event, that is a very powerful thing. And I don't know how many of you have had the benefit of experiencing one of these, whether among friends, spoken or unspoken. or with a beloved wife or husband, but or with when you take on a holy vocation as a monk or a priest, it's a very powerful thing, and it's one of the things that we've sacrificed in the name of autonomy and liberation in our current age. But it is truly a thing above price. You cannot put a price value on an oath spoken and taken in all seriousness and maintained even when it's hard. Next thing I learned, the mysteries of the church are real. So I was baptized, I think a couple of weeks before I left South Africa. I was baptized in Cape Town. And so in that time, since then, the vast majority of my experiences with the church have been in Alaska. And when I was baptized, I thought I knew kind of what living as a Christian meant, but I think I intellectually knew, but I hadn't experienced it. And I think you can only really experience it properly when you are partaking of the sacraments and the holy mysteries of the church, which includes baptism, confession, and the Eucharist, especially in my experience. The baptism was obviously transformative. Well, maybe not obviously, but it was. To me, it was one of the major experiences of my life, which I'll always remember. But I feel like the real work began to start when I moved back to Alaska and was spending this time apart from my wife. And then I'm dealing with these issues, loneliness, misdirected sexual energy, let us say, the drinking considerably too much when, for those days when nobody was around, just mostly things due to loneliness, just kind of spiritually atrophying a little bit after this high of the baptism, and then coming back to Alaska and being separated from my family, still dealing with pornography issues that I'd had for years, and falling back into them like basically whole hog now that I'm had this crushing defeat to my well laid out plans, and kind of taking in what that meant. But as I went to service, as I took of the body and blood of Christ, and as I confessed to my spiritual father and asked for his advice, slowly but surely my life began to change. And I'm happy to say that, a lot of things that, or not a lot of things, but a couple of, or at least one major thing I struggled with was, the pornography issue. And because I'm a high T lusty male, Mr. Patriarch likes booty, simple as. But during our time apart, actually, was when I was able to finally get rid of it. and cut that out from my life. And it was due to the graces of the church and confession and the body and blood of Christ. And being able to overcome that before my family arrives was a huge thing, because now, I began to see my wife with new eyes, let us say. And it was, obviously no details, but I've noticed a profound, I'll save that for later. But there's just been differences, let us say. And also same thing with the drinking. I was able to at least kind of get a handle on that, because I was never like a serious drinker in my life. But, during the time apart, I overindulged, I think, as a way of dealing with my loneliness. But through prayer, through confession, through the Eucharist, and the advice of my priest, I was able to largely get that under control, which was nice. And things that I'd also been meaning to do for years, but had never done, like trying to more or less daily read the Bible. Of course, you forget every once in a while, but you get back on the horse and keep doing it. I was able to start that as well. And I began to notice a change in my psychology in terms of what was important, which leads me to the other thing, which is what is important. So now I don't want to downplay some of the stuff I've covered on this channel in the past. I stand by my work. I stand by the things that I've said on here before, but this experience has highlighted for me what is actually more important. And what's more important for me is less the fascination and obsession with the political, even the meta-political. It's less about, theory selling and, this and that. All that's fun. And, within its proper context, that stuff is good to know. But the issue is those things can become idolatrous distractions from what is necessary. What is necessary is one's relationship with God. What's necessary is family. What's necessary is the chosen and unchosen bonds and responsibilities that we take on or are given in this life. And the love that we give and the service that we can be of others, that's what's important. And that's fundamentally what will transform the world and transform ourselves, transform our nations. Because these are unprecedented times in which we live. That is true. But the past was also very difficult in its own way. In some ways it was, things are better now in a couple of areas, but generally speaking, they are worse. But that isn't to say God isn't able to, hasn't shown us historically how he's able to overcome very difficult circumstances through changing the hearts of the people and through their repentance. And that really does begin at home. Because then when you open yourself up to, I guess, sort of being led in that way towards submitting, then all of a sudden you'll start finding these ways in which God will intervene in your life and seek to use you. And then he'll be like, hey, maybe you should do this. Maybe you should do that. Maybe you should get involved in this community. Maybe you guys should look out for each other. Maybe you guys should, build a new church. Maybe you guys should, make Alaska Orthodox again. And, what does that imply for, the course of the state going forward? I don't know, but it could be something big. So anyways, that's my thing on what's important. Obviously, the incentives of political institutions matter. Patronage is always going to be a thing. But if we are able to have that understanding of reality of power, but the populace, or let's say a good chunk of the elites and the populace have at least a respect for something higher above them, for the divine law, that's when you can see real positive shift take place. And we've seen it before in the past. So that is not to say, we just need to make the world Christian and then everything will be all right. It'll never be all right. It will never be all right. And anything that is good, which is built, will, subject to the human will be corrupted over time. However, that isn't to say the process of planting seeds and of growth and of rebirth, frankly, is not a worthy one to be carried out. And rekindling the flame for the next generation, focusing on these eternal things that persist beyond merely our time and precede our time, I think is one of the most important things you can do. So focus on the eternal, the transcendent. And I believe, this is just a hunch, but if enough people do that, they might not be able to change the United States. They might not be able to save the government. I actually do think that the government is beyond saving and is due for a reckoning, rightly so. But they might be able to change where they live. And how do you say, it starts at home, right? And living in South Africa really highlighted this to me, is that even if a place is very dysfunctional and has a lot of decline, you're still, by focusing on these important things, you can actually affect tremendous change right where you are and make your town, your neighborhood, a truly oasis in a world of evil, frankly. So that's my advice on that. One of the things I learned on focusing on the important during my time apart. We got 3 more, so we're 7 out of 10. So yeah, this should be 10 things I learned. The other thing is that even when they're very young, boys really, really like having dads around. Boys need their fathers. Now, there are some people who, like my grandma's an example. She was widowed when my dad was 1.5 years old. So my dad didn't really have a chance to have his father around. he had a contentious relationship with his stepfather after my grandmother remarried, but they're able to mend the the I guess the damage done there. But rough house, I'm telling you guys right now, as a father of young boys, rough house and pushing them to do things that are not like super dangerous, but like make their moms a little bit uncomfortable is one of the best things you can do. And one of the pieces of evidence I cite for this is my youngest son, who's a little over, I think it was a year and 2 months when he came back, was a little timid, a little bit of a mama's boy. Didn't like to be held by other people aside from her and my mother-in-law. And I'm not faulting Lauren for anything, or sorry, I'm not faulting my wife. Almost doxed myself there. For anything, it was just the circumstances. I wasn't able to be there to, raise the lad. But since he's been here, I've really prioritized just messing around with him and roughhousing, and the change in just like the month he's been here has been really something to see. He's taking a lot more risks. He's cool just sort of tootling around the house. He doesn't need to be held nearly as much. He doesn't need the boob to go to sleep necessarily. It's just been a delight to see how much he's grown and adjusted since he's been here. He loves roughhousing with his brother and me, and we play lots of games and stuff. It's really a lot of fun. And, looking after toddlers and infants is woman's work to a large extent, but the one thing that I think is invaluable that you can do as a man, as a husband, as a father, with young kids is just roughhouse. Just play the heck out of them. Do the whole monster thing, play hide and seek or whatever. It's that's my advice. Boys need their fathers, and when they're very young, play is extremely important. So, yes. So all those little tidbits that I heard about parenting and like what a dad can do for their kids, I saw sort of happen in real time, very quickly with my youngest son, and it's just been excellent to see. Two more. Family is the ultimate safety net. So when I came back from South Africa, I'd spent like my last money coming here and, trying to get passage and ship my stuff. So who did I have to rely on? Family. So my parents and my grandparents were a big help. So this is my reject boomerism, not boomers, but boomerism of like, just go out there and do it on yourself, blah, 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 blah. Actually, no. What's really important is those familial bonds, because at the end of the day, and if you don't have family like this, I feel for you. It's a rough place to be in, but try to get people around who, again, have that, how do I put it? That obligation that a family should have to helping you out, and you helping them out when they need it as well. Because I'm telling you, this story could have been a lot different if we didn't have family. It might not have the happy ending that it did have. But my wife was, or even if it did have a happy ending, it'd be a lot harder and a lot more stressful without it. But fortunately, my wife was able to stay with her mom and sister before coming back. And I was able to come here and have like a safe place to land while I basically, rebuilt from scratch, and having the ultimate safety net of family there to help give me a safe harbor in a storm while I got back on my feet was immeasurable. And I guess the last thing I learned is, which I kind of alluded to a little bit before in the past, was do not take sex and intimacy for granted. So I didn't realize to what extent I kind of was for much of my life, largely because since high school, I'd been kind of a regular porn user. And I think I talked about this in the stream with Red Hawk, but I sort of went through a brief period where I kind of got it more under control shortly after I got married. And then, we had a cancer thing and, issues, things, right? I'm not going to rehash all that, but suffice to say, I'd only really rid myself of the scourge of pornography in my time apart from my family. And all of a sudden, like, sex became, I thought it was like super important before, which was why I was, a coomer for off and on. But no, it's actually, you realize how important sex actually is when you cleanse yourself of that garbage, and how important sex is for the marriage, for uniting the husband and wife. And when you are able to order your sexual desires as a man in such a way that you are, they can only be fulfilled by your wife, then it really enhances the relationship in ways which are hard to explain. I'll just say I've never been more satisfied than I am now, let us say. And at any point, like, this is the best it's ever been. And I've been married for almost 7 years now. And yes, the value of sex and intimacy for the marriage is extremely important. A, because it produces children, but B, because it really does act as a wonderful, like, reset button for the marriage. So if you're a little frazzled or the day's like just not going great, that is one thing which can just totally set the tone for clearing your mind. But anyways, I digress. I will not explain anymore. But yes, really hammered home the importance of sex and intimacy and what it means, I guess, when that is taken away. Because it's not fun, but trying to basically learn to live more, I guess, monastically for a season, let I say, was a big learning experience for me. Was not easy, but as I was finally able to master it, I was able to once again fully appreciate what it meant for sex and intimacy in the marriage. So anyways, that's about it. It's been almost an hour now. I am going to read the comments. I see comments been blowing up. 37. I have not read any while I've been going, but I will go back now and read. Okay, so plans rarely survive contact with the enemy. Indeed. Heard that's potentially deadly at Robert MacDonald channel. Not sure what that is. A man's heart deviseth his way, but the Lord directeth his steps. Indeed. Yeah, this is absolutely true. Most insignificant choices can end up being the most life-defining decisions. May your father-in-law rest in peace. Amen to that. 100%. Gandalf to Bilbo at the end of The Hobbit. Yep. I'm of the understanding that suffering is an inevitable thing and that perseverance, in spite of it, is key. But I do have a concern that maybe the church romanticizes suffering a bit too much. Yeah. So in my understanding, again, this is me speaking as a layman. I am not an authority. I do not speak for the Orthodox Church. So let's get that disclaimer out of the way. I think there are degrees to which people are ready to, I guess, hear the suffering message, and the church kind of tailors their discourse around that. So, for example, like the way monastics will talk about it is perhaps different than if you're a priest, or different if you are a laity. But I think the big thing I hear emphasized in my experience, I guess, with the Orthodox Church is repentance and sanctification. Theosis, right? Those are the things I hear emphasized at my parish and a lot of the stuff that I read. Your mileage may vary in Roman Catholicism, but that's kind of the big messages that I get, and that, how do I put it? Just had a brain fart. Dang it. Damn it. Yeah, but anyways, I don't feel there's an overemphasis on suffering, but that's just sort of been my experience. Snow cones are daring. Yes, we are. At least the snow cone is. Okay. Guess John D would do that. Would go with that. I suppose so. I'm not sure what that's in reference to. I'm getting baptized into the Orthodox Church today. Glory be to God, and may God bless you all. God bless you too, Mr. Anxiety Floppa. Yes, glory be to God. I'm very happy to hear it. You love to see it. As friend Brother Augustine says many times. And yes, it will change your life if you let it, Mr. Anxiety Floppa. Do not take it for granted. Try to focus, like I said, on the important things. Do not try to think about the church as like, I'm joining the church because it's based. But yeah, I reckon you don't need me to tell you that, but really try to take the advice of your spiritual father seriously. It's wonderful. Oh, I see we have a super fat here. Okay, I'm going to see if I can't pull this up. I am an Orthodox Christian. I'm getting married in a couple weeks before moving to Alaska. What? We are in a LDR. I'm not sure what LDR means. We are in an LDR. Okay. I've also struggled with porn and political idolatry. Good to hear I'm not alone. Well, dude, you need to get a hold of me, Bill Josh. Sounds like you're my guy. And we should be friends IRL, or at least get acquainted with each other. So yeah, I'm all about IRL. I guess that's the other thing too, is the importance of IRL over internet. So the beauty about the internet is it does expose you to a bunch of ideas, And the main reason I use Twitter is it acts as a Rolodex. So I can contact and stay in touch with people I like who I met on the internet. But the distributus is 100% right when he's like, the purpose of the internet should be using it as a tool to manifest things in real life. And I 100% agree with that. But yes, yeah, man, shoot me a message on Twitter, or yeah, leave me a comment or something, and I'll see if I can't get in touch with you, dude. Would love to meet up in real life. So yes, that's I'm very happy to hear that. Glad to make more friends. Porn can warp a man. Sad so many young men get deep into it. Yes, definitely. I appreciate you being so open about this as something many of us struggle with. Yeah, man. I think there is, how do I put it? I think just being honest about this stuff is good. And you don't need to be like the porn guy. I'm the porn guy. I'm going to start the anti-porn channel. I'm going to sell you a course on like overcoming pornography, and all we're going to do is like talk about porn. But so basically, yeah, don't become the anti-porn grifter, I suppose. But I think occasionally having these conversations is good. And I mean, there's not really a lot of people, I guess, in our scene, if you want to call it that, who've sort of honestly spoken about this much. So I think having it on record to sort of discuss the issues of this in a personal capacity and sort of how it was practically overcome, I think is good for people. Because, yeah, I mean, it is something a lot of people struggle with, because there's a lot of dudes out there who, you know, are trying to, who are trying to do the right thing, but have this as a major stumbling block. And a lot of them do for years. So glad I can be of assistance to somebody. Cutting porn out, recalibrate your sexual arousal template to one's wife. Yes, this is 100% true. So, you know, like I said, our marriage, I thought was actually quite good. And I would say it was, but it's less of a was. I'm talking about in the past tense, like before I finally quit porn. I guess it was in comparison to most people's, but I guess that's just more of an indictment on the state of marriage, generally speaking. But I can say with 100% certainty that, yes, my sexual arousal template for, you know, relations within, yeah, what you said. I'm putting my foot in my mouth. I'm sounding like an idiot. But yes, it really does make your marriage better. Recalibrate your sexual arousal template to one's wife, 100%, 100%, 100%, which I think is the wisdom of modesty, by the way, like public modesty. Because when you live in a world in which the sexual, sorry, I'm going to take a sip, in which the sexual image, sexual persona of women is, I guess, sort of restrained and then you come home and your wife is the only person in which you sort of get to experience that, the unclothed female form. It's electrifying, let me just say. So yes, if you're able to get rid of porn, and if you're able to, I guess, sort of try to keep your eyes, I guess, in front of you and not wandering, yeah, your wife will immediately become like super duper hot. Even if you thought so before, now you're viscerally going to feel it. So yes. Cut down. Very happy to hear it. Yes, more winning. I was already feeling unreasonably nostalgic and morose today. Okay, regret. I think I've accepted Christ. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And lots of beards for Alaska. Yes, yes. The Catholic Church is about to have a showdown between the Novus Ordo and the traditionalists, the trads, and the Novus Ordo types are at loggerheads once again. Well, I don't have much to comment there because I'm not Catholic, but from what I understand, there's going to be a non-pastoral council, I guess, soon in the Catholic Church. But I think from a couple of Catholic friends I talked to in real life, it's kind of being blown out of proportion. I don't think Francis, as the trads call him, I don't think Pope Francis is going to necessarily, be like, we're going to be blessing LGBT unions or anything like that. I actually don't think that's going to happen. I do have my criticisms of Pope Francis and the Catholic Church, obviously, because I'm not Catholic. If I didn't have criticisms, I would be Catholic, right? But I think if one is going to be a Catholic, this separation between trads and Novus Ordo is kind of like old believers in like Eastern Orthodoxy and like the rest of the Orthodox Church. It's like this is a divide which shouldn't exist. And I think the trads, if they are going, and this is not my position, right? Papal infallibility, papal supremacy, but I do not hold to these. But if you are a Catholic and you do hold to them, then the only option is submit to Francis. Because if you don't, then as far as I can tell, you're not actually living as a Catholic. So, and if that's an issue for you, then, maybe you should look into Orthodoxy. But if you're going to be Catholic, I mean, you have to submit to the Pope, simple as. So it's not complicated. And the trads, I guess, up in arms, I think, and I understand it. And again, me personally, I would say a lot of the, this is where I might step on some Catholic toes. I think a lot of the complaints of the trads, they're having cognitive dissonance because on the one hand, their understanding of what the Catholic Church is based on sort of what they read and documents and understandings about the papacy historically and what it said for itself and how that is at odds and how they thought those things were supposed to be binding, but they're not. I think a lot of trads are basically those Catholics who have cognitive dissonance over, let us say, real or perceived, that's me being diplomatic, real or perceived inconsistencies and contradictions within the Catholic structure. So that's the pushback. But on the other hand, it's also extremely clear that to be Catholic means submission to the Pope and whatever the church says ecumenically, right? Or from the chair, So both, right? And if you don't get on board with that, you are in error. So either get with the program, or, if you're a trad and you're pulling on this thread and it's not making sense to you, maybe there's a reason for that. And maybe you should become Orthodox. That's all I'll say. Okay. Grace is a powerful incentive. It is. Got to put that 10 in the title, bring the boys to the yard. Yeah. I'm actually going to do that. Yeah. I'll rename the stream 10 Things I Learned. Yes. Teach your kids to be brave. Yes. The Rough House. The Rough House is big for that, for young kids. I'm not going to lie. There was a brief moment when I was alone and a tear ran down my cheek. Yeah. Cool. Nice visual. It's lonely at the top. Every time I think about being alone with a tear running down my cheek, think about scene with Maylard from Regular Show. How he thought they forgot his birthday. It's great. Huinand. Yes. Huimora. Feanor. It's Huimora over here. It's having dinner with the family. Bathed. Mental, spiritual, sexual connection is generally best. Yes. Once you lose that intimacy, it can really suck. Yes. But it can be recaptured. You can catch that lightning in a bottle again. And I think a lot of it involves, making sure that you're physically presentable, exercise, or having at least some form of getting your something that your body is physically straining against, eliminating porn, and being sexually aggressive. And that combination of, and trying to, get right with the Lord. That combination of things will do wonders for your sex life. Really will. And intimacy between you and your wife. Master it, pun intended. Okay, here we go. Bill Josh. Yes, reminder, Bill Josh, please contact me. Would love to meet up in real life. So I'm getting married in a couple of weeks before I'm moving to Alaska. Yes. Countertop aged rice, your leftovers. Yes. Going through here. LDR. Oh, yes. Long distance relationship. So we are in an LDR. Okay. That makes sense now. Bill Josh. Just circumstances make sense. Did you propose on the internet? I hope not. I visit it every month and a half. I proposed in person. Based. Yeah, no, I think we had spent 2 trips together before I asked her dad if I could marry my wife. And then I formally proposed, I think, on the 3rd trip. So yeah, when you know, you know. Yes. Crazy how reflexively people defend it. Are you talking about the prawn? Not sure. Prawn is gay. Yes. GHEYGAE, not GAY, YouTube. So yes, do not strike down my stream. Just pull the Band-Aid, go to an Orthodox church. Yeah, that's my advice to the trads, to everybody really. I don't care what denomination people belong to, but the Lutherans have Bach on their side. Bach number one. That's true. That's true. You can't. I can't take Bach away from them. Okay. I will not poo-poo Bach because he was a Lutheran. They understand the Catholic Church as the Orthodox Church, and unfortunately, it is not. Yeah, that's basically it. Regular show is goated. Yes. Put some egg in, some soy sauce. It'll cook. Yes. With the rice. Yes. All right. Thank you very much, guys. This has been great. Really enjoyed talking to you. Got up early this morning for it. Again, reminder to Bill, Josh, to contact me. I would really like to meet you in person, man, and hopefully get you plugged in with some good people up here. If you guys have any comments or anything you'd like to say, please leave a comment in the comments section. Would love to carry on this yarn further. Links to support the show can be found in the description. All support is, of course, greatly appreciated and helps sustain my family. Yes, I went there. I'm pulling on I'm doing the Orphans in Africa television ad for your support. Yeah. It's been a pleasure, guys. Back after a long time. I will continue to make YouTube videos on here with some frequency. But yeah, I'm just a busy man these days. But I will do my best. Thank you very much. God bless you guys, and I'll see you soon. Patriarch out.